Things look rather dire. The situation between Russia and the West, meaning the US and the UK, is pretty bad and it's getting actually worse. Humanity is at a great risk for a nuclear holocaust. Let's find out. Hello everybody, how are you doing? My name is Stavros. I'm a professor of international relations and an advocate for democracy, true democracy that is, participatory, direct democracy. I greet you from Greece, and we are monitoring the latest developments in the proxy war in Ukraine between the West and Russia. And things are getting really bad. It's less than 2 months now that we're waiting the new administration, the incoming administration of President Trump. In less than 2 months' time, we're going to be having a new president in the U.S. But this president, Mr. Biden, or whoever is making these calls, because it seems that he is not capable of making such huge decisions. Whoever's in control, they decided to pull up the stakes and, in a sense, escalate in the war between Russia and the theater of Ukraine. They have started escalating this past couple of days now. They began by giving permission to send technical troops, engineers of sorts, inside Ukraine. Allegedly, these people will not be fighting. They will be supporting and maintaining Western weapons that the US gave to the Ukrainians. But this is an escalation of its own. But the latest round of escalations came when the US president decided to blow things up, actually, for the next administration, but also for the conflict itself, by deciding to give the green light to Ukraine to use long-range missiles, the ATACMS missiles, for Ukrainians to attack Russian targets inside Russia proper. This is a major escalation because back in September, the Russian president, he said clearly that this would be a major escalation, and this would, in essence, make the U.S. a member of this, a part of this conflict, a part of this war. Why? It's pretty easy to understand this, actually, because to operate these weapons, the ATACMS weapons, the Ukrainians cannot do it by themselves. They need the info by the US satellites, and nobody has access and clearance to the satellites but the US personnel. So US military personnel will have the clearance. They will get the data from the US satellites. They will input this data to the navigation plans for these missiles, and they will shoot these missiles. So they will choose the targets. They will shoot these targets. So this will make them a part of this conflict. It was clear as day back in September. President Biden doesn't care, or whoever is controlling him doesn't care. It seems we're going to this major escalation. Yes, Monday the Ukrainians used the ATACMS to strike inside Russia, and they did strike in specific areas of Russia, not in Kursk, which is the first idea was that these missiles were given to Ukrainians to strike inside Kursk, because Kursk is something that they have been fighting between themselves and the Ukrainians. The Ukrainian troops are still inside Kursk, but now we have a new revelation by the Russian president. He actually gave a statement, and he said that yes, we have been attacked by the ATACMS, and in Bryansk we had these ATACMS fighting us and targeting us and bombarding us in Bryansk. But thankfully, he said, the S-400 and the Panzer anti-missile systems that the Russians have, they stopped these missiles. So it was supposed to be this permission for only inside Kursk, but it seems that they began bombarding other territories. Bryansk is another region of Russia. And then after that, the UK gave the same permission to the Ukrainians to use their long-range missiles, the Storm Shadows, which they used inside Kursk. So yes, we did see Kursk being targeted, but in this instance, there were victims. So some of these missiles managed to pass through the Russian defenses. They could not stop all of them. I guess They stopped 2 British-made Storm Shadow missiles, but they couldn't stop all of them. Some of them managed to pass through, so there were some casualties, some fatalities from the Russian side. So the Russians, as you can imagine, they were pretty angry about this. They were frustrated that it seems that the West doesn't care anymore about the Russian red lines, and this is truly a red line for Russia. I mean, it's clear as day that this is an actual, this is not a bluff. The Russians do mean it this time. This is a red line because now we really have US and UK personnel actually making the calls, picking the targets, and attacking installations, military depots inside Russia. So what happened from the Russian side? There was a major reaction by the Russians. This was also raising up the stakes and an escalation from the Russian side. They decided to attack the Ukrainians with, at the beginning we thought it was an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile. These are missiles that are capable of carrying nuclear warheads. Thankfully, this was not the case. It was an intermediate range ballistic missile, and thankfully, and I mean it, because it could have been an ICBM, and this will be the first time that we would actually see ICBMs in action. Thankfully, we didn't go that far, but yes, Putin said in his statement that I mentioned before that we did use our our newest missile. It's called Oresnik. It's an IRBM, as I mentioned. This is an intermediate range ballistic missile, and we used this to send a clear message to the West. The message is clear. They didn't actually need to use this missile because this missile has a long range of over 2,000 kilometers of range to attack Ukrainians. The Ukrainian target, specifically this target was the city of Dnipro in eastern Ukraine. So they didn't have to use such a long range missile, but obviously they did so because they did send a message. The ICBM, as well as the IRBM, this one, the missile that was used this time, as well as the ICBM, the intercontinental ballistic missiles, they can both both carry nuclear warheads, and the payload can be nuclear. So the message is clear that we didn't need to use this weapon, but now we used it to let you know that the next one can actually be nuclear. We are really that close to a nuclear war, a World War III, nuclear holocaust, whatever you wanna call it. So the Russians chose Dnipro, this city, because of the specific military complex in Yuzhmaz. This is a military complex where the Ukrainians have been producing missile parts, and as you can imagine, this is a major missile strike, a major ballistic missile strike. There's no more Yuzhmaz military complex anymore. As you can imagine, it's nearly destroyed. This is a military compound where the Ukrainians were producing rockets and other science-intensive products, space technology also. And according to the Russians, the Ukrainians were conducting experiments for a dirty nuclear bomb as well here. So, we'll never know. But this is what the Russians did. Interestingly, the Russians did inform the Americans, as we learned by the American side. They said that yes, 30 minutes before the attack, we were aware. We were contacted by the Russians through, listen to this, through nuclear risk reduction channels. Nuclear risk reduction channels. So yes, this was a strike that looked to be nuclear. The missile could carry nuclear weapons, so the message was clear. The next one could be nuclear. And the U.S. didn't know. They had 30 minutes. They didn't know where this missile was going to land. They didn't know if it would be in Ukraine, which city. And after everybody learned that it was Dnipro, they were waiting for images from the city to realize if it was still standing. Because if it wasn't standing, this was a nuclear attack. So nobody knew. The Europeans didn't know anything. They were absolutely in the dark. So they were afraid. There was panic everywhere. Panic in Brussels, in Berlin, in London, in Greece, in Rome. Everywhere there was panic. Even in Kiev, there was major parliamentarian sessions. They postponed them. Everything is shut down. The foreign embassies in Kiev have been shut down for the last 3 days, and they're still shut down because they're afraid of new attacks. We don't know what they will be. But yes, it seems that for a very short time, nobody knew what city of Ukraine would be targeted and what will become of this city, actually. According to Putin and his statement, this is a Mach 10 intermediate ballistic missile that was used this time. which means that it's extremely fast. It goes around by its speed. It chops at 3 kilometers per second. As you can imagine, nothing can stop this. The Ukrainians by themselves are admitting so as much. They're saying that we have the Patriot systems. Allegedly, supposedly, the Patriots could work against this missile, but no, they cannot. They're saying that it's not optimized against this missile, but yeah, the Patriots cannot stop such a fast missile. They said that the THAAD may actually be useful against this missile. The THAAD are the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense anti-missile batteries, which the U.S. sent, if you remember, in Israel to protect Israel by the Iranians. There are not that many out there, and the U.S. will definitely not send the Ukrainians any of these expensive batteries. But not only expensive, they are personnel intensive, and they need 100 people, U.S. military trained personnel, specifically specialized personnel, to work these air defense systems. So they're not going to be sending them to Ukraine. This is really a huge escalation. Russia is also saying that the first anti-personnel landmines from the U.S. to Ukraine have also been introduced into the conflict. This was also another escalation by the Biden administration. They started sending anti-personnel mines. Mind you, these are illegal weapons. There's a treaty to ban landmines because of killing people, maiming kids, and they destroy agriculture because nobody can actually use this land after that. So this is really a big escalation as well. So as you can see right now, guys, this is big, but it's not the worst of it. So Putin, in his speech, he wrapped it up by saying that, you know what, yes, all of this happened, but now, quote, we believe that we have the right to use our weapons against military facilities of our countries who allow their weapons to be used against ours, end quote. This is crazy. He said basically that we believe we have the right to use our weapons against the US and the UK's military facilities. He didn't say they're going to be attacking them, but he said they damn well right. It's in their right to do so if they decide to do so. So things are getting pretty heated. Things are getting pretty crazy. And now we're reading in the New York Times, which is in a sense like the speaker of the Democratic Party, or better yet, it's like the voice of the deep state of the U.S. The military-industrial complex are paying, and they're the sponsors of the New York Times. So the New York Times have been saying that several officials even suggested that Mr. Biden could return nuclear weapons to Ukraine that were taken from it after the fall of the Soviet Union. That would be an instant and enormous deterrent, end quote. This is crazy. The New York Times are saying that senior U.S. officials are thinking of sending nukes to Ukraine. And this is exactly what the Russians were afraid would happen in 2014. That's why they launched this attack. They were forced to launch this attack by the loonies in Washington, because the loonies in Washington, from the get-go, that's what they wanted. They wanted to still send nukes right in Russia's backyard. This is unacceptable by the Russians. And it was also unacceptable for the U.S., and they were correct to react to that in the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it should be unacceptable for the Russians right now. The U.S. don't care, don't mind. They are playing with fire. They're the ones to blame in this instance. Not only that, now there are other lawmakers that are asking the Biden administration to send Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. These are missiles that would strike inside Moscow. The very capital of Russia would be struck by U.S.-made weapons. This is clearly escalation. Giving nukes to the Ukraine. Are you guys crazy? These people are really out of their minds. So this is what we have right now. We'll see what happens. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, because there will be more videos like this. Keep raising the black guys, keep resisting, and keep learning and speaking the truth. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. So exactly what happened in Ukraine is now happening in other parts of the periphery of Russia. We had a major NATO exercise in Finland. Finland is now a member of NATO. And right around the border between Finland and Russia, we have a new military escalation, I should say a military drill. And also there's another escalation in Poland, in the eastern part of the country, in the city called Redzikovo. There was a new a new NATO base that was open, U.S. military base that was open on November 13. And this, to the Russians, is also a major escalation. The Polish are saying this is a defensive, base and from a defensive alliance. Hell no, this is not a defensive base from an aggressive alliance. NATO is an imperialistic alliance. This is really, really crazy. This is what they couldn't have. They couldn't have in Ukraine. Now they're making a reality in Poland. So we will be monitoring what kind of missiles the U.S. and the rest of the loonies would pull inside Poland. Everybody's a target now, and I mentioned that the Russians are saying, we can target military installations of the U.S. and the U.K. They can target them in other foreign countries, like there's a U.S. base, for instance, in Berlin. What about that, Germany?